Hey guys, so if you did not know, Peacock dropped a documentary about Diddy called The Making of a Bad Boy, and I'm going to review it and recap it now with you guys. And if you're watching this on TikTok, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube because TikTok will be going January 19th. I will say that this documentary kind of explained how Diddy ended up how he did, but of course, there's still no excuse, and I definitely think he's guilty now because the stuff that he went through, it made sense, like why somebody would kind of end up crazy. So they said they got a lot of people who are here to talk about Diddy, and this is their first time speaking out. We see Al B. Shore in the intro, and we also see Sarah from Making the Band. So the first person they meet up with is Diddy's friend Tim, who he grew up with since he was a kid. Tim lives in the middle of the woods. And I don't know, something just kind of seemed a little off about him to me too. Like, he's one of those off the grid people. And to me, a lot of times something is wrong with people like that. No shade. So Tim said he doesn't know Puffy, he doesn't know Brother Love, he only knows Sean, and he's here to tell us about stuff that he feels like is important to note from Sean's childhood. So Tim basically said Diddy is the son of two it people from Harlem, Janice and Melvin. Diddy grew up in Mount Vernon because they were able to afford a home out there for him to grow up in rather than growing up in Harlem. So Tim goes on to explain that Mount Vernon basically has a south side and a north side. The north side is where Diddy is from, and that's like the suburban, more middle class side. And the south side is the ghetto or the hood, which is where Tim is from. Tim said that Diddy's dad passed away before he ever met Diddy, and it was always a mystery to them. And Diddy basically had to find out about his dad from other people in the streets. Long story short, they said his dad used to work for Nicky Barnes, and he was snitching to the cops, and he got taken out for it. So Tim said that when Diddy's dad passed away, he left Janice a house and a bunch of money. So she was trying to pivot and figure out what she was going to do next. And she knew that she wanted to fill the house with somebody who was close in age with Diddy, which is how Tim and his mom ended up moving in the bottom floor of Diddy and Janet's home. So of course, Tim and his mom accept the offer because now they're able to move from the south side of Mount Vernon to the north side of Mount Vernon. But Tim said that as soon as he met Diddy and he came outside, he knew that Diddy was different. From the picture that we saw, it looked like Janice was dressing Diddy like a young pimp. So we also get introduced to another childhood friend named Lee. So Tim and Lee are telling us about how Diddy used to play a lot of sports and he was on the team, but he kept saying like, I wouldn't say he was good. Like low-key saying he was only kept on the team probably because of his mother's connections. So even though Tim and Lee said they did grow up being friends with Diddy, they didn't go to school with him because he always went to private or Catholic school. And I'm just thinking about how crazy that is because that means every day Tim was getting up and leaving that house and going to a public school, probably rough and getting beat up and everything else. And Diddy was over there running to private school. I think Janice made a nice gesture by inviting Tim and his mom to move in, of course. But I do feel like she had the money and she should have just gone ahead and put Tim in private school as well. Because how can you have him living in this great neighborhood, but he still got to go to school in the hood every day? That's not really changing his life. Now, Diddy gonna be mad at Tim because y'all know Diddy like to act like he's so tough. But Tim told us that Diddy is a punk. He said that people could smell that Diddy wasn't tough. And Diddy always used to be getting called a bitch and getting hit upside his head. And Tim basically said that whenever he saw somebody bothering Diddy in the neighborhood, he would step in because he was like his big bro. But eventually Tim went to the military, so he moved out of the house and Diddy was on his own. So then they start to talk about how despite the fact that Diddy did grow up rich and in this so-called good lifestyle, he did also experience some adverse childhood experiences like losing his dad at a very young age and in a violent manner. And the therapist that was there basically said when children lose a parent, they tend to want to fit in or be a part of something bigger. So now we get introduced to Gene Deal. Y'all have probably seen Gene online. He's Diddy's former security guard or bodyguard from 1991 to 2005. And he's been exposing him for a while. So Gene said he was a part of this gang called the Same Gang and Diddy wanted to be down, but a lot of the guys didn't like him because he wasn't from Harlem and they basically just felt like he wasn't tough, he didn't fit in. So basically one day Gene and the guys decided that if Diddy comes over and he keep acting like he want to be down, we gonna rough him up and basically initiate him into the gang. So he came, they kind of beat him up a little bit, and then after that he was considered a part of the gang. So Tim said when he came back from the military, he expected to see his good old friend Sean and thought that it was going to be normal. But Diddy told him, they don't call me Sean no more. They call me Puff. So basically, he didn't want to identify as Sean anymore or even think about Sean because Sean is the punk who was always getting beat up. So that's why he got all these names and all these alter egos because he don't never want to be Sean because Sean was getting beat up. Now, they didn't have anybody who was involved in the Sean case, but I do wish that they would have talked to Sean or the lady who got popped because I believe she has done interviews saying that Diddy was the one who did it, but Sean went down for it. So one of Diddy friends kind of talked a little bit about when he first started dating, and he was like, I may have heard a little bit of stuff about him being jealous or not that sensitive, but they kind of brushed over it and was just saying how he was really focused on music at that time, and he was at Howard University. So they said that Heavy D was one of the people that they used to hang out with at Howard University, and he was also the first artist signed to Uptown. So Diddy asked Heavy D, like, we're friends, can you do me a favor and try to get me an internship at this label because I want to get into the music industry. Then we get introduced to Al B. Sure, and he basically tells us that he's the first artist to go #1 and platinum at Uptown Records. But of course, we know that him and Diddy's connections go way deeper than that. So Al B. Sure basically went on to say that he helped to fund Uptown. So I guess he was trying to say Andre Harrell didn't have enough money or something like that. But I'm pretty sure that's something that a lot of people didn't know. So they said that Diddy did a lot of suffering to get that internship at Uptown. He was sleeping outside of Andre Harrell's car, showing up at Heavy D's doorstep. And all that made me think about is that's why he felt like it was normal for his Making the Band contestants to have to do some of the stuff he had them do. Because he feels like if you really want to be in the industry, you'll go to the lengths that I went to. You'll sleep outside of my car. You'll walk the bridge and get me that slice of cheesecake, and you're going to do whatever. So by the 1990s, Diddy is officially an intern at Uptown Records. So at first when he was interning at Uptown, he basically wasn't getting paid much and he wasn't doing much. He was making copies, running and getting coffee and stuff like that. So to supplement his income for the time being, he started promoting parties. So as he's doing this party promoting and promoting events, him and Heavy D decide to do this celebrity college basketball game at City College. The proceeds of the events were supposed to go to AIDS foundations, and basically there were a bunch of celebrities supposed to be there like Heavy D, LL Cool J, and Mike Tyson. And they basically said that this event was extremely promoted and publicized. Even though City College only held 2,700 people, there were like 10,000 tickets sold. So they have one guy here whose brother passed away in the incident, and they have another guy here whose sister passed away in the incident. So the guy whose sister passed away said that she met Diddy through his girlfriend at the time, and Diddy was the one who gave his sister the ticket directly. They said that they were packed in the event to the point that people couldn't even sit down. There were people packed up outside trying to get in, and eventually it became like a trampoline stampede kind of situation, and 8 or 9 people lost their lives. So rest in peace to all of them. So Diddy's childhood friend Tim says that after this event, Diddy actually became more well-known, and in his opinion, it kind of made him in a weird way. And while he wasn't criminally charged, he did have a lot of lawsuits to deal with from the incident. So 6 years go by and the lawsuits still haven't been settled. But within that 6 years, which means that it's now the late 90s, Diddy's music has started doing well, and he's become much bigger than he was at the time of the event in 1991. He reached out to the guy whose sister passed away, who I told y'all Diddy gave her the ticket directly, and called him to come to his office. When he got there, he said that Diddy offered him $50,000 and told him that it was a good donation. And it said by 1997, his net worth was already $40 million. Meanwhile, he's offering this guy $50,000. So he said he lost it on Diddy and told him, I don't even want us to talk money. You should have been inviting me here to do something in the memory of my sister and the other 8 people who lost their lives. Was Sonia your friend because you gave her the ticket directly? And he said that Diddy wouldn't answer the question But the brother said that he reluctantly ended up taking the $50,000. And that was considered the settlement that Diddy gave him, like to privately settle the lawsuit. And obviously that means after that, that's it. There's no resuing or trying to get more money. You accepted the $50K. Another one of the victim's family members said that his family only received $40K for his brother's death in the incident. And long story short, the families just don't feel like he took any accountability, and that he did interviews after the incident lying, saying that it wasn't overbooked, it wasn't oversold, and things like that. They also said that they feel like if he would have actually been held accountable for this at that time, maybe it would have stopped some of the other things that ended up happening to other people down the line, or at least slowed them down. So now we're back to Al B. Sure, and he basically said that before Diddy became an intern at Uptown, he met a woman named Kimberly, who we know was Kim Porter. So obviously Al B. Sure and Kim Porter ended up getting married and having a son, which is Quincy. And because Al B. Sure had pull at Uptown, he was able to get Kim a job as the receptionist. So Albie said at some point he was working with Casey and JoJo in the studio, and Diddy came by. He said at the time he believes that Diddy was with Misa, but when he saw Kim, he said something to Albie Sure like, wow, I wish I had a beautiful girl like that. And Albie Sure was like, you do. You have Misa. Which, for those who don't know, Misa is Justin's mother, and she's like a big stylist from back in the day. She used to style Little Kim and stuff. And basically they said the whole Uptown staff watched it happen. Diddy basically swooped in and stole Kim right from under Albie Sure. She ended up leaving him for Diddy. So now we're back to Gene, Diddy's former bodyguard for 14 years. And he said that Kim and Diddy dated off and on for years, but it was always on in Diddy's mind. And that he was basically sick and obsessed with Kim. and that no matter who he dealt with, he always ended up running back to Kim. So we get introduced to the makeup artist who used to work for Diddy and basically the women that he was dating at the time. And she said that Kim was from Georgia and she wasn't this glam girl that everybody thinks she was. They made her glam, which made me feel like Kim left Al B. Shore and probably what was a good situation because she wanted more money and a better lifestyle. But honestly, Al B. Shore looked better than Diddy and he probably had a better personality than Diddy. So it low-key gives gold digger. I don't want to say that, but that's how I feel. So I'm saying it. Al B. Shore said that there's been a lot of propaganda put out against him over the years, crafted by Diddy's publicist. Basically, he said that the whole narrative of him abandoning Quincy or not being in Quincy's life is not true. Diddy never adopted Quincy. Quincy's last name is still Brown. And the only reason that he wasn't involved as much was because Kim literally told him, you need to stay away because I don't want nothing to happen to you. Basically, Diddy don't want you involved and I need you to stay away because he'll take you out. Which again, if Kim felt like that strongly that he would take out Al B. Shore, she should have knew that her own life was in danger as well. So there was something else that Al B. Shore wanted to say, but he ended up holding his tongue and he said that it's a part of evidence, but he'll share it at some point. So I'm assuming that he might be involved in this trial that's coming up in May and we'll hear about it around that time. So they start talking about all of the alleged DV that took place between Diddy and Kim. The bodyguard, Gene, recalls a time that he went to the hospital and Kim was all bruised up, but he said that she didn't say nothing. And then we see the lawyer, Lisa Bloom, saying that she's representing somebody right now who basically is saying that they're a victim of Diddy as well, but they also saw him commit acts of violence against Kim. I feel like that's probably Dawn from Making the Band because she's suing Diddy right now. So they said that within a year and a half of him becoming the intern at Uptown Records, he became the director of A&R and eventually was given his own label, Bad Boy. So they said that Diddy was reportedly given a $55 million advance reportedly from Clive Davis, basically when he launched Bad Boy. And his childhood friend Tim was just saying, like, imagine what that does to a person. But he was never poor. So I don't know what he was trying to say. And remember, he tried to tell us that he grew up with roaches crawling on his face and stuff. He was lying. So now they have a phone call with a former Bad Boy employee. They have their voice altered and they said that they didn't want to come on camera because for the last 3 decades, Diddy has allegedly been having people hurt who speak out against him. But no shade, the person submitted some never before seen footage to the documentary. So I feel like Diddy would know who it is anyway, because you were probably one of the only people in that room and he would know who was sitting like right across from him at that angle. Like, I would know who recorded that video of me. I'm just saying. So this employee said that they had been working at Bad Boy since about 2015 to 2016. And they're basically just saying that by the 2010s, Diddy had reached mogul status. So the bodyguard, Gene, said that he feels like Diddy values fear and that he feels like if people fear him, they respect him. But obviously that's not true. And then the former Bad Boy employee who's speaking and has his voice altered has included a video. And he basically said that he was filming because in this moment, he thought that Diddy was going to smack the assistant. So now we're seeing Sarah from Making the Band. She was so pretty back in the day. And she basically just starts with just talking about how he dealt with the group. And she said that at one point, Diddy got mad at one of her bandmates and told the bandmate, you make me so mad, I want to eat your flesh. And then she said he told another bandmate, oh, you keep rolling your eyes at me, I'll go outside and get a crackhead to smack the shit out of you for $20. Then Gene said that he heard Diddy say about the band, oh, they gonna keep effing with me and I'm gonna drug them out and pimp them out to my niggas. Gene even said that he has seen Diddy curse at his own mom, telling his mom to stay out of his mother effing business. So now we're hearing from the former Bad Boy employee that's on the phone again, and he was saying how sometimes he just felt like Diddy would do stuff to test you. Like he would wink or his chair would lean over a little too close to this guy to the point that he was like touching him. And he said at one point, Diddy showed him a video on his phone of 2 guys being intimate and told him that this is just what people got to do to make it to where I'm at in the industry. So the interviewer asked the guy, well, I'm just going to flat out ask you, what did he have you do or did he make you do anything? And the guy basically said he didn't really want to answer the question and that it was a very touchy situation for him. So take from that what you will. So now we see a video of Dawn and Kalina from Dirty Money sitting with Diddy doing an interview. Diddy looks very annoyed and like aggravated and Dawn just seems very nervous while she's talking. Then we see Lisa Bloom again, who, like I expected, is representing Dawn in her lawsuit. So she's here to speak on Dawn's behalf. Dawn is not in the documentary. And she basically said that what people didn't know is that behind the scenes, while Dawn was in Danity Kane and Dirty Money, she was deprived of water, sleep, food, etc. Diddy was not only violent towards her, but other women around her, such as Cassie. Dawn has also said that she was SA'd by Diddy, allegedly. And surprisingly, Kalina came out and basically tried to debunk all of Dawn's claims. I personally feel like Kalina was paid off and she's disgusting. So now we're seeing Sarah from Making a Band, and she basically said that there was an incident that occurred, and after that point, she never wanted to be around Diddy unless there were cameras around. And I saw a lot of people who were a little older than me when that season was out saying that at some point towards the end of the season, Sarah's husband started popping up. And he was always there, and people didn't understand why her husband was there. But the incident that she's about to go into detail about explains why her husband would be present after that. And I think they also said her husband got into it with Diddy at some point. But Sarah basically said that her and Diddy were in a studio by themselves and he touched her in a place that he wasn't supposed to. That's all she really wanted to say or, go into detail about. So at this point, Diddy has a lot of money. He's the mogul that we know him to be up until a couple of years ago. And he's just now moving to the East Hamptons in New York, which is like one of the richest parts of New York. And he's starting to throw these big parties, all white parties, inviting all of his friends from Harlem to show them where he's at now. So they showed a clip of Diddy like on the top of the balcony talking down to all of the guests, basically saying, y'all here for my party, let's get our groove on. And then in an hour, we could put the kids away. For what? Of course, they show all of the celebrities who were in attendance: Jay-Z, Beyonce, Donald Trump, Will Smith, etc. Now, they had this one guy, his childhood friend Lee, up there. I kind of feel like he's been paid off and he was up there to defend Diddy. He said that when he was at the after parties, he didn't see anything crazy or inappropriate. Then the producers asked him if there was drug use at the parties. He said, "Oh, I wouldn't say it was a lot of it. They were mostly just smoking weed." They asked the security guard, Gene, the same question. He said, "Of course, it was weed, pills, etc. It was a rich people party. You know what was there." And you could see he had like a countdown. They showed another clip of him again on the balcony telling them 15 more minutes and the kids got to go. Like, why are you rushing the kids out of the door? What are you planning to do? So the former Bad Boy employee who has his voice being altered said that there wasn't a Diddy party that didn't turn into a freak off. And he said that when Diddy first gave him some Bad Boy gear, he told them this is blood in, blood out. Basically meaning if you out, you out. Blood out means you're dead. So he said within a few months of him working for Diddy, Diddy started sending him on these missions to go to like these clubs and stuff and like recruit these girls and bring them back to him. And then they basically showed Diddy having these little gatherings in the studio or his house. And the former employee on the phone said that whenever Diddy has the rooms red, that's because he considers that the frequency for making love. And that honestly sounds like him because in recent years he's been trying to talk like that, like talking about frequency, and that's a word he's been using a lot lately. So this former employee on the phone call goes on to say that he saw Diddy call out like two girls and tell them to come here. They went in the room with Diddy and they didn't come out for another 24 hours. And he says that he's sure that these girls were not of legal age. So now we get back to Tim, Diddy's childhood friend who lives off of the grid that we were seeing at the beginning of the documentary. And he said that he doesn't know why Diddy turned out like this, but he feels like it all goes back to childhood. He said that Diddy didn't have his dad growing up, so all he had was his mom, and there was a lot going on in their house because remember, Tim and his mom ended up living there as well after Diddy's dad passed away. So he said on the weekends there were always parties in their house. There was a lot of drinking and smoking and drug use going on around them. And then Diddy's other friend Lee said that he hasn't been at the Janice Combs parties, but he's heard about them. And basically, Janice had a crew of chicks that she would bring around to make everybody comfortable. Wink, wink. Basically, to do some intimate favors. So basically, Janice was a madam. So Tim, the childhood friend that actually lived with Diddy, said it wasn't a shocker if him or Diddy mistakenly walked into a room in the middle of the night and there was a couple in there completely nude being intimate, because that is the kind of house Janice had because she was a madam. So Tim said that's just what they were fed, and of course they were desensitized, but they didn't know it at the time. They just were kids who thought that that was a normal Saturday night. And the therapist was like, of course, growing up like that will make it where somebody doesn't really understand intimate boundaries. Okay, so now we get introduced to somebody named Ashley. She had her face blurred, but she was there. But like they just had her in the dark basically. But they gave her name and we do hear her real voice. So we're hearing from Ashley and also her attorney. And her attorney basically said that the case has a few defendants. Of course, Diddy, because he's the mastermind behind everything. There's also Christina Coram, also known as KK, who they are saying is Diddy's like right-hand woman, kind of the Ghislaine Maxwell to his Jeffrey Epstein. And there's another guy named Shane Pierce who has come to basically be like a scouter or recruiter for Diddy as well. So Ashley says she met Shane at a bar and he basically FaceTimed Diddy in front of everybody at the bar. And some of the people were excited. They were fans of him or whatever. So Ashley says she hung out with Shane a few more times. And then on March 23rd, 2018, Shane allegedly invited Ashley to his home. And she said that when she got there, Shane went into the kitchen and got her a glass of water. Once she drank the water, she started feeling funny. So, of course, it sounded like she basically feels like she was drugged. And Ashley said that not long after that, Diddy walked in a ready to party manner, and he also had his bodyguard with him and his right hand woman, Christina Coram, and another person who they believe is Shane's friend. And basically, according to her, they all took turns brutally R wording her. She said she was R worded with a TV remote. At one point, Diddy put a knife in her mouth and like the inside of her cheeks and told her he was going to give her a glass glow or a glass gold smile, which is basically, I think, like a Joker smile where you have like cuts right here. Ashley also claimed that they told her they could ship her off to anywhere in the world and that she would never see her family or her loved ones again and that they were taking her tonight. She ended up like coming out of it, whatever influence she was under. And she said they had gone outside to smoke. So she finally had the strength to kind of get up. But then she realized her clothes were gone, her phone was gone, her keys were gone. And she basically still just made a run for it and went to the neighbor's house. The neighbor called the cops and eventually the sheriff showed up at the home. Ashley said that the sheriff didn't offer her a ride home and kind of just basically said, find your way back, which gave me that Diddy has this police department in his pocket. And that might not be the only police department around this country that he has in his pocket that he might be paying off to cover up his dirt. And the girl, Ashley, basically says she doesn't trust anyone anymore. She's become very reclusive and she's just been isolating herself because she's living in fear. She's afraid that her speaking up will cause them to come after her, and she just doesn't trust people, period. So now the documentary jumps back to 1997, and we're about to discuss the whole conversation about if Diddy might have had something to do with Biggie's death. So Gene shows a picture of him and Stevie J the night that Biggie passed away. And he said that in the week or so leading up to them going to LA, Diddy seemed very anxious and just really wanted to get Biggie to LA. He said it was so weird because Biggie was telling people he needed to be in London. And Diddy was like, no, he's not going to be in London. He's going to be in LA. And Gene was like, he already knew it was hot because of the East Coast, West Coast beef. And Diddy was talking about, oh, we going out to this vibe party. And Gene was like, I don't feel like that's a good idea. We don't got enough security. And I got some intel. And I just feel like if we go outside, one of us is not going to make it back. And he said, Diddy said, I don't want to hear that shit. So they all got in the car. And we all know what happened next. Biggie, unfortunately, lost his life. And a lot of people feel like it was really meant for Diddy. And Gene basically said at the end of the day, he do basically feel like it's Diddy's fault because Diddy is the one who placed Biggie in that atmosphere and was pushing him to be in LA. But as far as him feeling like he had something to directly do with it, he said like he could or he could have not. Like it could go either way. Gene said he stopped working with Diddy in early 2005 because he got into it with his mom, Janice. He said that he felt like Janice would degrade him, having him do all these little runner tasks like go into her car and stuff when he's supposed to be a bodyguard for Diddy. So he said one day Janice asked him to go get some food out of the car and he said, no, I'm not here for that. And Janice started rambling like, you the only one around here who don't do what I asked you to do. And he said Diddy basically came out and told Janice to leave Gene alone. And he said Janice was like, I'm tired of this. And he was like, you know what? I'm tired of this too. And he said he got up and he walked out and he never came back. So the childhood friend Tim kind of explained why he lived off the grid. He showed that he did have some plaques for being a producer for Biggie. So he was also a producer at that time. But he said after you see a few friends pass away and people are getting shot, you kind of have fight or flight. And he basically said he chose flight. So he left the music industry. The producers asked him when was the last time that he actually spoke to Diddy. So Tim said that as kids, they used to have Pop-Tarts as their midnight snack. So he would periodically send him Pop-Tarts over the years to his office as like a birthday gift or a holiday greeting or whatever. And he said that Diddy would never respond. So he basically said when he left the music industry in 1999, that's when they started communicating less and less and they eventually just fell off. So now Al B. Shore is back and he's talking about Kim's death. And he basically said that he saw her a couple weeks before her murder. And he said, am I supposed to say allegedly? So of course, everybody's stating the obvious. Kim was only 47 and she passed away allegedly from pneumonia. And people just feel like that's unlikely. People get pneumonia all the time, especially younger people, and they can shake it. Like it doesn't take them out, especially if they're healthy, which Al B. Shore said she was, as far as he knew. So Al B. Shore confirmed that him and Kim did stay in touch and remain friends while she was with Diddy, and she confided in him, and he knows that she did keep a diary, and at some point somebody got the phone password and the laptop password. And eventually someone found out what Kim was doing. And I guess Diddy found out as well. And they basically just said that there's been a lot of conspiracy theories about people feeling like Kim's death was caused by Diddy, but there's no proof or evidence of that. So then they brought Jaguar right into the documentary. They didn't actually show her, but they used her audio. So she said that Uptown Records was started with 5 people: Andre Harrell, Al B. Shore, Heavy D, Diddy, and Kim, who was the longest working employee and receptionist. And I'll Be Sure basically said that there was rumors about everybody supposedly writing a book or telling a story or trying to get away from Diddy, and they're all dead except for Al B. Sure and Diddy. And we know that Al B. Sure was like almost dead. He was in a coma. So Al B. Sure basically said he couldn't say much because, again, it's legal and it's all in evidence. But he said that he kept a record of every single person who came to see him and was trying to set him up and who was a part of his attempted taking out. And they're in the file. You're in the file. And Al B. Sure basically said that he wants the authorities to reopen Kim's case because he feels like Kim is no longer here because she was going to become Cassie Ventura, who we know is basically the person who opened the floodgates on Diddy and really got him taken down, as she should. So we saw this weird clip where Kim, Cassie, and Diddy were like all on the red carpet at the same time. But they were saying that in 2007, Kim had completely broken things off with Diddy, and by 2006, Cassie had put out Me and You. So people were starting to suspect that there was a relationship between Cassie and Diddy. They had an interviewer from Revolt there, and she basically said that he was a controlling boyfriend. Then they had Cassie's friend and makeup artist. She said that it was the night of the Grammys. Diddy had put Cassie up in the Beverly Hills Hotel, and she was also sleeping in that room, like in the other bed. Didn't know that Cassie had gone out and she was fast asleep. All of a sudden, Diddy comes barging in the room going crazy because he's mad that Cassie left and went outside. She said at some point, I guess, he went and got Cassie or Cassie came back. He said that him and Cassie went into the room and she heard what was going on in the room. So she started packing Cassie's stuff like in panic mode to try to get her out of there. And when Cassie came out of the room, she was all knotted up and had a busted lip and stuff. So the makeup artist took Cassie into her home and Cassie stayed with her basically until they figured out what were her next steps going to be. But the makeup artist basically said, Cassie ended up wanting to keep it quiet and I guess went back. So then they basically talked about Cassie's lawsuit and how Diddy settled less than 24 hours after the lawsuit was filed. They also talked about how Diddy was out here doing interviews saying he was going to give all of his artists their publishing or their masters back. And everybody kind of knew there had to be a catch to it because he's grimy. Gene the Bodyguard even said in his last conversation with Biggie wanted to be away from Diddy and Bad Boy. And Diddy obviously owned Biggie's publishing, which Biggie wanted to fight for. So Sarah from Making the Band basically said that they wanted you to sign something that said you would never speak on anything that happened to you, anything that Diddy ever did, and that at this point the publishing wasn't even worth anything for some of the people. It was only worth like $300. They talked about the CNN footage getting released of him kicking Cassie and everything, and how at that point he decided to put out an apology video, but it kind of only made things worse because he said, "I'm not asking for forgiveness," and he didn't apologize to Cassie in the video. He basically just apologized to the people because he knew his image was tarnished. And they said that by the end of 2024, there had been over 30 lawsuits filed against Diddy for things such as SA, and these are claims from both men and women. He talked about this guy named Courtney Burgess who has handed over this tape to the courts, and he claims that this tape has 8 distinct individuals, including Diddy and other A-list celebrities, engaged in intimate acts, and he believes that some of the people were intoxicated and may not have known that they were being recorded. And they said that these were things that Diddy could have used to hold over these other celebrities' heads. Like, hey, I have this video of you. I'll show it to your wife. I'll show it to your family. I'll show it to the public. And like the therapist said, yes, this documentary did show that Diddy has some trauma and there's some things that will make us maybe understand how he ended up like this. But at the end of the day, he's grown and he needs to still be held accountable because there's plenty of people who went through traumatic stuff and still got themselves together and their life had a positive outcome. And they basically asked them, did they have anything they wanted to say, the people that were interviewed for the documentary. Sarah had her little funny moment from Making the Band. She said, "Diddy, did anybody bring you a slice of cheesecake in there?" His friend Ron was just saying he didn't know what to say and he was shaking his head. Gene was saying, don't try to play Mr. Nice Guy or Mr. Good Guy, basically all of that brother love stuff, when you know that you've been a piece of shit all along. And the brother of the victim of the city college event where there was the stampede that we talked about earlier, and I told y'all how Diddy gave his sister the ticket directly and then tried to offer him 50K. He basically said, whether you're innocent or guilty, karma has resurfaced, period. And his karma definitely has resurfaced with a whole lot of things, including how he did his artists over the years. And Tim said that deep down he knew that this day would come where he would have to be sitting here in front of some people telling them that Diddy was a good kid at one time, even though he turned out how he is now, and he's basically monsterized. But that's the end of the documentary, guys. Like I said, it was a really good documentary. It's on Peacock. It's about an hour and a half long. So make sure you check it out and let me know what you think about it in the comments. And if you're watching this on TikTok, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube because TikTok will be gone in 2 days on the 19th. Okay, I'll see y'all later. Bye.